corridor, it's always welcome. But when we welcome the positive thing,
the visuals of, in fact, Wing Commander Abhinandan, who is in fact heading in to fly a aircraft with the Air Chief. This is a MiG-21 sortie, from what we understand. That Wing Commander Abhinandan will be flying with the Air Chief very, very shortly. So these are pictures that we're getting you now from in fact, where we're seeing pictures of Wing Commander Abhinandan there with the Air Chief BS Dhanoa who's on your screens. And in fact, they're doing their final checks before they in fact fly this MiG-21. Remember, this is one of the first times that we're seeing Wing Commander Abhinandan shortly after he returned to India, following his capture by Pakistan after having shot down a Pakistani F-16. Right. So, in fact, Air Chief BS Dhanoa is due to fly the aircraft very, very shortly. This is a MiG-21 as we speak. That will be flown by Mr. BS Dhanoa, who is the Air Chief. These are in fact live pictures that we're bringing to you. Remember, this is one of the first times that we're actually seeing Wing Commander Abhinandan shortly after he returned to India. Returned by Pakistan, in fact, after his own airplane was shot down by Pakistan, after he shot down a F-16 in the aftermath of the Balakot raids that were conducted by India. So we're now seeing these final pre-flight checks, which is customary before one takes off, now being conducted by the Air Chief and Wing Commander Abhinandan. Right. From what we understand, this is in fact Pathankot, where the Air Chief and Wing Commander Abhinandan will in fact take off on their sortie in a short while from now. This is according to ANI, and we'll be getting more details on that. But in fact, the Indian Air Force Chief is also a MiG-21 pilot. Let's remind our viewers, and had flown planes during the 1999 Kargil War, where while he was commanding the 17th Squadron during that war. Right, we're seeing those pictures there of them, in fact, enter the cockpit as we speak. And my colleague Tanvi Shukla is now joining us on the phone line. So, Tanvi, this is the Air Chief BS Dhanoa and Wing Commander Abhinandan, in fact, preparing to fly a MiG-21 Bison, from what we understand.
Yes, absolutely, Viren. And, you know, this is an interesting way of India's hero getting back to flying, getting back to, you know, conducting Air Force sorties, because he's getting to fly with none other than the Indian Air Force Chief, Air Chief Marshal BS Dhanoa. It's been a long process, and I'm sure it's also been a grueling process for India's hero since he came back from Pakistan. You know, there is a step of things that have to be done after you've gone through a situation like this in the middle of a conflict. So Wing Commander Abhinandan had to go with a series of, you know, psychological tests, some amount of retraining before he could then get back to flying. And hence, this is going to be, for himself, personally a historic day when he actually gets back to flying for the Indian Air Force. MiG-21 fighter aircraft, Bison fighter, in fact, is what he was flying on that day when his jet was shot down by the Pakistani side, and he ended up on the Pakistani side and was then taken into their captivity, returned 2 days later. So those are the visuals that we're getting to you right now of the sortie that was carried out by Air Chief Marshal BS Dhanoa along with Abhinandan Varthaman. Remember, this actually happened on February 27th, so that's how long it's taken, you know, even for the India's finest of the pilots to get back to the skies, because that's the procedure being a fighter pilot itself is an extremely demanding and grueling, role. Mentally and physically, you have to be fit. There are very, very tall demands for it, and so it's taken that long for him. And these are the visuals that we're getting now. Viren?
Right, stay with us because I've got Mr. Kamal Agha who's joining us on the phone line, defense expert himself. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. So we're seeing Wing Commander Abhinandan, in fact, step into the cockpit once again with the Air Chief. A hugely symbolic, but also a message to the forces. What's your take?
I think it's a great occasion. Indian must be very happy to see him flying once again. It's I think, a remarkable job he has done in the past. Coming out, he has suffered also a lot because of his captivity in Pakistan. Must have been tortured, at least the psychological. To be there, itself is a big torture. Now he has come out. The government has managed to bail him out or bring him back. But still, it took, as your other correspondent has mentioned, it took some time, debriefing and psychological testing, and the whole process he has passed through, and now once again he's in cockpit and flying. That's a great moment for him and for his family also, the support which he received from family and millions of Indians. Sorry.
That's true, and there was a huge outpouring of love and support to Wing Commander Abhinandan. I'm also joined by Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark, retired, of course, who joins us on the phone line. Air Vice Marshal, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. It's really a feat of his own determination, his own strength that he's been able to overcome, because it's not easy, in your opinion, to undergo what he went through and then return to the cockpit.
One of the worst things you can do to a fighter pilot like him, or all flyers, is to be grounded, not to be flying. It's like a fish out of water. So to that extent, this is a glorious moment for him, that he's back in the air, he's back to normalcy. He's had some very trying 6 months ever since the 27th of February, when he was shot down, and my colleague before me was saying that he showed some nerves of steel, which is in many ways characteristic of the Indian Air Force, the showdown of the nation, both in detention, both in those trying moments it went through, the family, his wife, his child. So I think this is a great moment for him, and it's a great moment for the entire Indian Air Force. That the person who represented it as an individual who took on the ultimate thing of taking on a F-16 and then having been shot down, and then having gone through this very most trying period for a flyer in the Air Force is not to be flying. And this is psychologically devastating more than anything else, because you feel the job you're supposed to be doing, you're not doing. It's an element of an interactive conversational process between the individual, professional, the service, and the nation. And in that triad, I think Abhi has come out with flying colors, and I think the nation and the Air Force needs to wish him the best of luck in his resumption of flying, and continue to shine like a star.
Air Vice Marshal, well put there. I just want to, get your thoughts when you have Wing Commander Abhinandan make his return to the cockpit in the manner that he is doing so. You also have the Air Chief who's flying with him today. What kind of a message do you think it sends to him and to the rest of the rank and file of the Indian Air Force and other forces?
There is a very delicious coincidence, because the Air Chief, as most people know, was commanding 51 Squadron, the squadron to which Abhi belonged. And when he, in fact, it is that squadron aircraft which he was flying, which took off on being scrambled when the large formation of Pakistani Air Force aircraft came in. So for Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa also, it's a very, he's retiring at the end of the month. He's 51 Squadron. He commanded. Abhi belonged to 51 Squadron. 51 Squadron individual was shot down, and that individuals happened to be Abhi. And most people also know Abhi's father has been a very distinguished Air Marshal of the Air Force, Air Marshal Varthaman. So it's a kind of a family unit, individual, interactive process being played out as a kind of a ceremonial, and characterizes that process which has marked Indian Air Force evolution ever since 1947. That camaraderie, that family unity, the huge professional courage and professional determination of Abhi in a moment of crisis, overcoming it, going through difficulties, and yet getting back to the most beloved place in his life, that is the cockpit of a fighter. So I think I can't describe it as such a phenomenal moment for him and for the Indian Air Force.
And it's almost impossible to overstate how historic this is and how big this is for him and for his family, for the rest of us as well who are watching. Because Air Vice Marshal, when he returned to India, the pictures that we're seeing there on the left, the whole of India stayed up late at night to watch that moment when he actually returned home, back to familiar territory after his own jet was shot down. And now when you see this, it's almost come full circle for him, having returned to the cockpit today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in a moment, as I said earlier, this is the moment for the entire nation, because he represented India at that moment. The Indian valor, the Indian values, the Indian determination to defend its frontiers. And to that extent, his coming back to the cockpit now is once again a celebration for not just the nation, as I said earlier, but most specifically for the entire Indian Air Force, the command to which he belonged, Western Air Command, and to 51 Squadron of the MiGs, which is based in the northern sector, and which was his squadron from there he took off. I think great celebration, and I'm so glad Mirror now is addressing it in this comprehensive detail.
Thank you so much, Air Vice Marshal. Please stay with us. I've got Brigadier MAHALINGam, another retired serviceman who's now joining us on the phone line. Brigadier, thanks so much for speaking to us. Good afternoon. A great moment, a smile today. Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman back in the cockpit of the jet that he flew to shoot down Pakistan's F-16.
Absolutely. It is, as far as a soldier is concerned, this is a great moment. I'm sure he must be enjoying every moment of it. For an Air Force pilot, the aircraft in which he flew, that is very, very significant, and he getting back again to flying job is a very important thing. As far as Abhinandan is concerned, he is a master as far as flying is concerned. You would have noticed with that such an old aircraft, MiG-21s, he shot down a Pakistani aircraft, which possibly could be F-16. And therefore, as far as I am concerned, I am extremely happy about it. And we must compliment Abhinandan as also the Air Force, because sometimes when such accidents take place, they review the whole thing, and sometimes a medical category problem arrives, and therefore they don't permit the flyer to fly again, and they put him on some sort of a ground duty. But in this particular case, it is a fantastic thing that they allowed him to fly, and he is once again back in the cockpit and flying the aircraft, which perhaps is a part of himself. It's congratulations, Abhinandan. That's what I can say.
And Brigadier, it's also great for the morale, not just of Abhinandan, but also the rest of the force, as perhaps the other forces as well, because I'm sure they'll watch as well the pictures that we're showing on our screens to tell the story of how the Air Chief joined with Wing Commander Abhinandan Varthaman on his first flight after he he in fact returned from captivity.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, not just the Air Chief or anyone. See, for his entire mates, the people who have been flying with him in his squadron, to him, all of them, he is a comrade in arms. In fact, they would be flying together if there is a war tomorrow, and they must have been flying together. They have cracked jokes amongst themselves, they eat together, and that is the type of culture that they have. And therefore, this is a great morale booster for everyone. And the very fact after the aircraft had come down, for Abhinandan to be again given aircraft and made to fly, that itself is a great morale booster, not only for that particular squadron, but for the entire Air Force. The Air Force must be having a great time, feeling happy about what has happened to Abhinandan.
It certainly is, and there in fact is that MiG-21 just about taking off. These are pictures from a little earlier in the day from Pathankot Airport, where in fact we're now seeing a jet take off. He's going to stay with those pictures, but Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark, if you're still with us, just for the benefit of our viewers, for those who may not know, just being in the cockpit of a fighter jet itself is a superhuman feat. And to come back from what Wing Commander Abhinandan went through and then return to the cockpit, in your opinion, how much of a superhuman task is that? Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark, can you hear me? Okay, we'll try and reconnect with Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kark. But now, from what we understand, this was a 30-minute sortie that took place. They took off at about 11:30 this morning. In fact, from the Pathankot Air Force Base. Let's go across back now to Brigadier Mahalingam. Brigadier, let me put that question to you because it's a superhuman feat. It requires a different level of ability to fly a fighter jet to begin with. How much tougher is it then to return to the cockpit in that same fighter jet, especially when you've gone through what Wing Commander Abhinandan went through?
Absolutely. It is a great moment for him. It is a great morale booster for him. In fact, a pilot, after having come down, there are a lot of possibilities. One is he could have been injured, and secondly, he could have been rendered not fit for flying. That also happens in the Indian Air Force. That must be understood. But despite all these odds, for him to get back to the cockpit of the aircraft with which he has been associated all along, with which he has trained, with which he fought, and in fact brought down the Pakistani aircraft. So to that extent, it is a great comeback as far as Abhinandan is concerned. As I told you earlier, it is not only for Abhinandan, also for the entire squadron lot. The officers who fly together with him, who live with him, who crack jokes with him, and who go on sorties with him. To the whole lot of them, it is a great comeback, and it is a fantastic time, and they all must be cherishing every moment of this particular flying by Abhinandan.
Right, Brigadier Mahalingam, thanks so much for joining us with your thoughts this afternoon on a historic day for the Indian Air Force as for the rest of the country. India's hero back in the skies. Just a short while ago at Pathankot Air Base, in fact, he along with the Air Force Chief BS Dhanoa, in fact, flew a MiG-21, the same jet that he used to shoot down a Pakistani F-16. With those pictures, we slip into a short break here on the news. Thanks for joining us. Our coverage will continue on the other side.